Hi, welcome to Math Minute. My name is Adam, and today we're going to be talking about domain and range. Here are the definitions of domain and range, and domain is all possible x values, while range is all possible y values. So what I have drawn here is a function mapping. Now, I may have talked about this a little bit earlier in the first video, what is a function, but let's talk about it again. This is the set of x values, and this is the set of y values. So there's certain cases where it's not everything you can think of that is the x values, and not everything you can think of as the y values. So what we want to do is find out what can we plug into our machine. If we're talking about the machine again, if we have a pencil machine, like we talked about earlier, we can only put in wood blocks. We can't put in a rubber ball and get out a pencil. It doesn't make sense. So the domain is what we can put in, the range is what we can get out. So I have an example right here of an equation, and this is the square root of x minus 1. There's two things that really stop us. So what we want to do when we're talking about domain, the very first thing is thinking, what can't I do? What is a problem in this equation? And I have those two cases right here. We can't take the square root of a negative number, and we also can't divide by 0. So we won't talk about this in this video, but we are talking about this specifically. We know that whatever is under the square root sign has to be positive. So what we can say is x minus 1 has to be greater than or equal to 0. We can still take the square root of 0. So let's literally write down what I just said. X minus 1 must be greater than or equal to 0. X minus 1 is greater than or equal to 0. It's kind of weird because a lot of the time what you think in your head is what you need to write down on paper. So with domain, this is exactly what we need to do. Now in the last video, we talked about how to solve inequalities. We can treat this just like an equal sign. So we know that x has to be greater than or equal to 1. We're just adding 1 to each side. So what this says is that x must be greater than or equal to 1. Now, what this is written as in terms of domain is 1, because we're including, so we have a closed bracket, to infinity. So our domain is 1 to infinity. We can have anything. So this set of values right here is 1 to infinity. Okay? Now, we want to find out what the range is. This is a little bit trickier because we can't have as much of a concrete idea or method to solving this. We need to just think, what do we know about this original equation? What are the values we can get out from it? Well, let's just think. Can we get a negative number out of that? No, we can't. Taking the square root of anything is always going to give us a positive number. Now, what we do know is that these are the only possible values we can use, 1 to infinity. So let's start plugging some of them in and see if we can notice a trend. So if we plug 1 in, we have the square root of 1 minus 1, which is 0. The square root of 0 is 0. Now if we plug in the square root of 2 minus 1, this is the square root of 1, which is 1. Now if we keep increasing, let's just take the square root of 5 minus 1 equals square root of 4, which equals 2. So as you've noticed, as we've gone from 1 to 2 to 5, we get bigger and bigger. So what we know is that the smallest possible value is 0, and as we get bigger and bigger, we can go as high as we want, because if we took the square root of 1 million minus 1, that's going to be a big number. And if we went just a little bit farther, the square root of 1,000,001 minus 1, that's even bigger than that. So what we're saying is that that can go to infinity. That can keep going on forever. So we know that our smallest value is 0, and we also know that we can go on forever. So the domain was 1 to infinity, and from that we can find the range was 0 to infinity. So those were our two solutions. So what we're saying now is that for this function, square root of x minus 1, we can plug in anything from 1 to infinity. And our total set of possible solutions is from 0 to infinity. So this has been a quick overview of domain and range. Domain's a little bit easier to solve. You can have a concrete method, as you've seen. It's a lot of writing down what you're thinking. That's my method of solving domain. Just write down what you think. And range, you use what you know about the domain to solve for the range. So this has been Domain and Range. Hopefully it's been helpful, and we'll see you next time.